Hello and welcome to a very wet, cold and rainy Monza circuit for the final round of the GP2 Championship. We've got the live sprint race coming up, and just in front of me on the reverse grid is pole sitter David Valsecchi. But everybody will be focusing on the race for second in the championship. It's Bruno Senna versus Lucas di Grassi, just 1 point separating the two in the championship standings. As you can see, Bruno Senna starts fourth on the grid with Lucas di Grassi down in eighth on the grid. Now the fight's between those two, but it was Giorgio Pantano who took the crown in the championship yesterday. Now let's take a look at just how he did it, and he didn't make it easy for himself.
And we can start racing for real. The green flags wave for Giorgio Pantano as he leads us down the main straight. Smash! Big crash behind. We started racing, and within seconds we have a huge accident. Is this one last throw of the dice for iSport and Bruno Senna? And they have given Giorgio Pantano a drive-through penalty for crossing the line at the pit exit. Lucas di Grassi getting past Giorgio Pantano. Bruno Senna still not high enough up the field to reduce the difference between himself and Pantano. I think we can say goodbye to Bruno Senna's championship challenge. Lucas di Grassi wins and closes up on Bruno Senna in the battle for second place in the championship. It's Giorgio Pantano, GP2 champion for 2008. This year, Pantano is king of them all.
I still don't realize I'm winning the championship. I need probably a little bit to know about that. Now I won this championship, and I want to see if I have this chance to be in Formula One.
It's a bit of an empty feeling not to win the championship, considering that in theory we should have won it. But I think I have impressed the right people, and maybe I get a chance in F1 next year.
So let's get a check on the championship standings then. As you've just seen, Giorgio Pantano is the 2008 champion, but there is the all-important battle for second place. Bruno Senna holding on to the second for the moment. Lucas di Grassi, yesterday's race winner, only 1 point behind in third. Romain Grosjean could still catch them if he wins today and his rivals don't score. He's currently fourth. Pastor Maldonado just 1 point behind Grosjean in fifth. Sebastian Buemi will finish sixth in the championship. Vitaly Petrov seventh, and Alvaro Prente holds on to eighth. Now this is the last chance for the GP2 drivers to shine in front of the Formula One paddock. So let's see who's got what it takes to perform in these difficult conditions, as it's absolutely teeming it down here once again in Monza. We'll find out with all the live sprint race action after the break. Welcome back to the very last race in the GP2 2008 Championship, and it is absolutely teeming it down here, just like yesterday's conditions. It's extremely wet. Giorgio Pantano has taken the championship, but remember there are two podium places up for grabs. It's between Bruno Senna and Lucas di Grassi. Bruno starts fourth on the grid, whereas Lucas di Grassi starts eighth on the grid. As you can see, the drivers are now doing their formation lap in the rain. It is David Valsecchi that does take pole position. Your champion Giorgio Pantano is in 10th. Do look out for Romain Grosjean as well, who starts 5th on the grid. But most importantly, as I said, Senna 4th, di Grassi 8th on the grid. Now it's over to your commentators for all the live sprint race action, Chris Goodwin and David Croft.
Thank you, Charlie. Good morning, everybody. I suppose it's only fitting, as Giorgio Pantano begins his reign as GP2 champion, that the wet stuff continues to fall on us here at Monza. It's been a quite horrible weekend. The conditions resembling something out of Glastonbury rather than motor racing at the moment, and another tricky few laps for these GP2 drivers this morning, Chris. It's not as wet as it was yesterday, but they're going to have to take care.
Well, they really will. They look like they're going to start in the conventional fashion, a standing start off the grid. Yesterday they started behind the safety car. It was much wetter at the start of yesterday's race. This really resembles the condition of the racetrack in the middle of yesterday's race. Not quite ready for slicks, and looking back all the way down the field, I haven't seen anybody brave enough to actually try to go for slicks. It just isn't grippy enough, and there is still rain coming down. So everyone on wet settings in terms of tyres. What they're doing with the suspension could be a different story. Halfway house probably, but again, looking back, they've all got the very super low downforce wings going for straight line speed here. These cars are difficult enough in the wet, but when you're running low downforce as well, it's very tricky indeed.
21 laps for the sprint race this morning, and whilst the focus will be on the battle for runner-up in the championship between Bruno Senna, Lucas di Grassi and Romain Grosjean, there will be plenty of drivers wanting to impress one last time out there to safeguard a drive for next season, or to try and move their way up. Giorgio Pantano into Formula 1, Bruno Senna maybe into Formula 1, and this man David Valsecchi will want to impress in front of his home crowd, starting on pole this afternoon. So it could be a very exciting, explosive race, this one.
Well, it's going to be an exciting start. They didn't do a standing start in the wet yesterday. This will be the first time these guys have had to release the clutch, try and manage the engine revs and contain the wheel spin. And you're going to see a big variance, I think, in getaways coming up right now. As Charlie said, it's all about Bruno Senna and Lucas di Grassi, how they can fare relative to each other. Lucas has been renowned for great starts all through the year. Let's see what he can do today.
No Javier Villa, he's been excluded for causing the crash yesterday that took out Andy Zuber and Vitaly Petrov. No consolation to either driver, really, because they start right at the back of the grid. Mike Conway starts 12th on the grid today, and as Charlie mentioned, Lucas di Grassi starts 8th, Romain Grosjean 5th, and Bruno Senna 4th in the battle to finish runner-up in 2008 to the champion Giorgio Pantano, who will start 10th on the grid. And we're just waiting for Andy Zuber at the back to slot into position. No Javier Villa and no Adrian Vaez either. So 24 drivers, and Alberto Valerio, he picked up a penalty yesterday for speeding in the pit lane. He starts 13th. 5 lights on above the drivers, and away we go one last time in 2008. Valsecchi getting a poor start. Rodriguez moving over to the right hand side. D'Ambrosio moving into the lead, and Grosjean and Senna now nibbling at the leader's heels. It's Rodriguez who leads them away down towards the first chicane. Buemi got a bit of a slow start as well. D'Ambrosio goes straight on, and Valsecchi holding everyone up. There's Grosjean and Senna tangling a little bit through the first chicane, but well done to Rodan Rodriguez for getting the better start from 3rd on the grid and zooming past the Dams and the Durango.
Well, there's Karun Chandhok. He made a great start there. He's just behind that lead group. Wheel to wheel there, Valsecchi and D'Ambrosio. So is D'Ambrosio going backwards? Grosjean taking him on the inside of the second chicane. And Bruno Senna again wheel to wheel with D'Ambrosio, who straight lines the corner.
Absolutely, as do Karun Chandhok and Andy Soucek as well, gaining a bit of an advantage if you ask me. There's Bruno Senna fighting now with Lucas di Grassi down in 5th and 6th place. Valsecchi holding up D'Ambrosio, then Grosjean comes through, and then Bruno Senna behind him through the second of the Lesmo corner and going straight on. That's Karun Chandhok in the back of your picture. Another Sunday morning, another sprint race, and another race that ends early for Karun Chandhok in the iSport, and that will do his team's chances of winning the team championship absolutely no good whatsoever.
Well, was looking very good for Karun Chandhok and the iSport team. In fact, good start from him, but he disappeared very quickly from the Lesmo corner there. And a bit of damage to some of these cars. There's been quite a lot of wheel-to-wheel action. I think Andy Soucek looks like he might have some damage to the front wing of his car. In fact, it might not even be attached to his car.
It's been a bit of banging wheels already as we ride on board with Giorgio Pantano and getting past Marco Asma, maybe they're back in 10th or 8th place at the moment. Just trying to work out on our screens as Pantano goes through. Down in 16th place, I think, at the moment. It's Roland Rodriguez that leads nonetheless from Valsecchi, and here's Grosjean and D'Ambrosio wheel-to-wheel down the main straight. You can see the spray kicking up and hiding the view of Bruno Senna and Lucas di Grassi. Going through the chicane on the inside, that's D'Ambrosio trying to get past Valsecchi. He made rather a hash of that. Can the man behind him, Romain Grosjean, get past through the Curva Grande? No chance. D'Ambrosio closes the door. Now to Grassi on Senna through the inside of the Curva Grande. Wheel-to-wheel action here in the opening stages. There's Mike Conway right behind Lucas di Grassi. He's going for it too. Oh, and there's Bruno Senna spinning into the Della Roggia chicane. Has he kept it together? He has. Has to go on to the runoff, but that was almost absolute disaster for Bruno Senna, spinning like a ballerina here on a Sunday morning.
Well, he's managed to take a couple of places going backwards there. He'll have to slot back in behind Romain Grosjean as he does. That's exactly what you have to do if you derive an advantage to going straight on through one of the chicanes. So he lives to fight another day. This is a great race, wheel-to-wheel stuff. If you're attacking the guy in front, you've got to also keep an eye on the mirrors right behind you. Big loser at the moment, it's Lucas di Grassi who's dropped behind, well, D'Ambrosio and Mike Conway. So Conway's got past di Grassi there.
Karun Chandhok definitely out of the race as we watch what happened to Bruno Senna riding on board, and just a bit too late on the brakes, nowhere. grippy enough for him. And he did well to keep it together. There's Romain Grosjean and Jerome D'Ambrosio in the foreground. Senna spinning, and he was lucky he didn't hit anyone as well.
Well, he's jigged to the left, to be honest, to miss the two cars in front, out-braking each other, but braking early as a result, going off the racing line. And again, you know, quite a stressful moment, but he lives to fight another day. He's fifth at the moment. They're tucked in, well, not tucked in quite behind Romain Grosjean, and he's got D'Ambrosio behind him, getting a toe down into the first corner, but Senna on the drier, slightly grippier line on the inside.
Yeah, Mike Conway charging through the field from 12th now up to 5th. Very much has Bruno Senna in his sights, going through that first chicane. Then there's Lucas Di Grassi and Jerome D'Ambrosio coming through, past Maldonado behind them. And who's that? Looks like Giorgio Pantano going through the slalom course on the runoff area at the first chicane. Ho-Pin Tung goes past him and back up into 10th place. We can watch from the start once again. And David Valsecchi very slowly away there. Roldan Rodriguez cutting right across the track to get past D'Ambrosio and Valsecchi.
As I said, these guys haven't done a start this weekend, and they certainly haven't had much of a chance to start in the wet, so big variance in some of the starts, and Di Grassi made a good one. D'Ambrosio having to straight line the whole chicane there, and well, very tight wheel-to-wheel stuff, and you can see there Karun Chandhok made up a lot of places through the first corner. There's
Alberto Valerio going wide onto the gravel. He's now, by the way, the fastest man on the track.
And that's where Andy Soucek's wing went there. He did lose his wing and caused a bit of damage there, and well, we're back live now, and that's Mike Conway going around the outside there at the Ascari chicane. Very fast corner, and getting wide on the exit, carrying too much speed mid-corner and losing out on the exit.
Almost made it stick. He still might have chance. Down towards the Parabolica they come, wheel to wheel. Conway and Senna. Conway just nips ahead of Bruno Senna and Lucas Di Grassi right behind the Brazilian. Three of them going round very closely together, and it's almost wheel to wheel again. Bruno Senna is going to lose 2 places in the space of 400 metres. Di Grassi manages to get past Bruno Senna now down the straight, and Senna's down to 6th, but has he got the toe behind the Campos car? Looks like he has, down into the chicane. Who can break the latest? Senna, he's going to go straight on, outbrakes himself. You can see that coming. He's going to gain a couple of places here, but he's going to have to concede them to Mike Conway and Lucas Di Grassi, just far too late on the brakes.
Very difficult to actually get these cars stopped. Every lap we see cars going straight through there, and behind them more going straight through. Again, same as before, Senna will let Di Grassi get past and retake that position and go.
Whoa, he makes it! Mistake, Di Grassi and Conway, and Senna spinning once again. And Bruno Senna was letting Lucas Di Grassi pass, but it was taking quite a while, and Di Grassi was getting tangled up with Conway.
Well, that's Conway and Di Grassi there coming together, taking cars out with them, and it looks like Di Grassi's lost the least in that little incident.
I wonder, when we see a replay, just whose fault that was, and I did think that maybe Bruno Senna was taking a while to let Lucas Di Grassi pass, but I tell you, he could be the big loser in this one, because Bruno Senna drops out of the points now, and as it stands, Lucas Di Grassi will leave ahead of him in the championship standings.
Well, you can see the damage to Di Grassi's nose here. We're on board with Bruno Senna, and to our right you can see Di Grassi braking even later still and harpooning Mike Conway out of the race, and Senna diving over the curb on the left side, but taking a long time to regain the circuit and losing a lot of places as a result. Here's Di Grassi outbraking Senna, but driving straight into the back of Mike Conway's car there, damaging his nose, and well, taking 2 cars out in the same go.
Mike Conway has stopped. That's Bruno Senna's sister, Bianca, watching on from the garage there and probably not liking what she's seeing. The friends and family of Roldan Rodriguez will love this side. He's still out in the lead from David Valsecchi and Romain Grosjean. Then comes Jerome D'Ambrosio, then Di Grassi getting past Pastor Maldonado down the straight. He's in 5th place at the moment, needs to hang on to that 5th place because he needs at least 2 points to go ahead of Bruno Senna in the championship standings. Maldonado at the moment in 6th, then Buemi and Pantano and Tung and Senna down into 10th now, and Zuba and Yaconelli and Kobayashi, Petrov, Yamamoto, Asma, Parente, Valerio, Felipe Nunez and Herc. Mike Conway has stopped. Andy Soucek needed a new front wing, and Karun Chandhok went off onto the gravel a long time ago, handing the team championship to the Campos team this season.
Well, it's been a fair few changes in the running order just now, and just looking back, Behind Maldonado, we've got Giorgio Pantano trying to catch up as well, up into this lead group. He's champion, he doesn't really have anything much to prove, but he does want to try and finish his season on a high in this Sunday race. And well, he's gaining slightly, but to be honest, doesn't quite have the wet weather pace on an empty piece of racetrack. It's just that the cars in front are holding each other up massively.
At the moment, Romain Grosjean is 9/10 of a second behind David Valsecchi. Valsecchi 2.5 seconds behind Rodan Rodriguez, but lapping almost a second a lap quicker than Rodriguez at the moment. Well, they're not making a huge amount of impression, it seems, from those pictures. There goes D'Ambrosio through ahead of Lucas Di Grassi. The official gap is 0.8 of a second, and then 0.3 of a second back to Pastor Maldonado, who gave us such a thrilling race yesterday. Won, of course, by Lucas Di Grassi, but great charge from Maldonado through the field. What's the gap now between this little trio? D'Ambrosio, Di Grassi, Maldonado separated by 1.2 seconds, the three of them, and it's Di Grassi just going to have a little look down the inside. He'd have been ambitious, so thought the better of it. Oh, and Maldonado squeezing right up on the Brazilian through that first chicane and looking very unsteady under braking.
Well, it is unsteady under braking. It's really, really slippery. A little bit bumpy as well, but you're arriving at super high speed, probably about 180, 190 miles an hour in these conditions. It's more like 200 in the dry, but your braking point is so much earlier, your grip level so much lower in the wet weather. It's very, very difficult. And really, you know, it's no disgrace to go straight through a chicane, because most of these drivers, either today or yesterday, have done exactly that. If you're pushing hard, you're on the limit, and if you go over the limit on the braking area, you've got no chance of making the corner.
I think it actually has stopped raining this morning. Certainly looking out of our commentary box window, I can't see any rain, but very damp still as Di Grassi moves to the right-hand side and on the run down out of the second Lesmo towards Ascari, gets past Jerome D'Ambrosio. Now, can Maldonado get past as well? The Venezuelan tried it, but ran really out of straight in which to achieve the move. Di Grassi moves up into 4th place. And oh, very unstable coming out of the chicane, the Ascari chicane there. But moving up into 4th place, will definitely finish runner-up in the championship the way it's standing at the moment. Maldonado now on D'Ambrosio, round through to the Parabolica, switches to the inside. Has he got Di Grassi in his sights? Can he make it stick? No, he can't. Fabulous move to get past D'Ambrosio. Maldonado really going for Di Grassi once again.
Well, Maldonado nearly taking 2 places in one go, out braking D'Ambrosio. Meanwhile, Lucas Di Grassi, I think now slightly on the defensive, slightly on the cautious mode, really braking a little bit early for Parabolica, but nearly lost out as a result. But he's got Maldonado, who doesn't have to be cautious. He's got nothing to be cautious about. So this will be an interesting one now. How carefully does Lucas want to drive, and how desperately does Pastor Maldonado want to get on and up and try and get into the podium places?
If he wanted to, he could just let Maldonado pass and then still finish runner-up in the championship. But after yesterday's battle, I wouldn't imagine he wants to give the Venezuelan any bragging rights on the track, riding on board with Lucas Di Grassi here. And that's how he managed to get past Jerome D'Ambrosio. The Belgian ran wide coming out of the second Lesmo.
Easy pickings when the car in front's done that, no momentum, and there's the move. And as I say, Maldonado nearly pulled it off, but just went a bit too fast into the Parabolica as Lucas Di Grassi was able to get back on the gas. Well, so Maldonado was still struggling to get the car turned in. He is behind Lucas Di Grassi still, but looking quite menacing.
And the leader is still Rodan Rodriguez, 1.5 seconds clear of David Valsecchi. Back now with Bruno Senna in 10th place, but for how long has Ho Pin Tung in his sights going down towards Ascari, under braking, passes the Trident into the chicane, and very nicely through the chicane as well. Senna up into 9th place, still though out of the points, and the man ahead of him at the moment, Giorgio Pantano.
Well, Pantano now right up behind Sebastian Buemi, who in turn is stuck behind D'Ambrosio. D'Ambrosio seems to be lacking a little bit of pace now as the track potentially dries up slightly. It's becoming less wet and more greasy. Seemingly the setup on D'Ambrosio's car not really liking it, and Pantano really looking like the man on the move at the moment. Maybe they set the car up for these slightly drying conditions.
Yeah, moves to the left-hand side of Sebastian Buemi. Is he going to try and go around the outside? Has he got the room to do it? Buemi just squeezes through on the inside ahead of Pantano, and then just gives a little tap to D'Ambrosio out of the chicane. D'Ambrosio really slowly away from that first chicane, and Buemi giving him a tap from behind. And if the Belgian didn't know that Buemi was there before, he certainly will now. Through the Parabolica, two cars following behind each other, and then Giorgio Pantano waiting to pick up the scraps as well. Towards the chicane they come now, the Della Roggia. Buemi and D'Ambrosio go straight on. You can see that coming. Slip back behind past Maldonado. But look at the advantage they gain, because look how further back Pantano is now, because he actually took the chicane properly.
Again, in a situation like this, even though your positions don't change, you are actually meant to just lift off and drop back to the car that was behind you and really lose any of the advantage you've gained. Here they are, wheel to wheel, both of them braking far too late to make the corner. I think Buemi looking like he wanted to. D'Ambrosio just a bit too fast, clips the curb, wasn't able to actually turn left enough, and they straight line and live to continue. But well, there's Petrov. He's not continuing at all, is he?
No, he has retired. As you can see, watching from the pit wall now, his season is over. Pretty much finished yesterday by the accident involving himself and Javier Villa, not his fault, of course. Now Pantano pulls out from behind Sebastian Buemi. Towards the Parabolica they come. Pantano, can he switch into the inside? No, just tucks in behind Buemi, going through the final turn as we now go down to the main straight. And David Valsecchi, fastest man on the track, told you he was gaining on Roldan Rodriguez. Not just gaining, getting past. The man on pole is back out in front once again, past Roldan Rodriguez into the first chicane, and the Durango leads here in his home race. David Valsecchi back ahead of Roldan Rodriguez.
Just about managed to get the car stopped to turn right into turn one, was very slow through turn two, the left-handed part of the chicane, and just really had to block the road so he could get the power on and get away. But good move, well done there from Valsecchi. Now let's see what he can do. Now he's in the lead.
Right, he's in the lead. Lucas de Grassi's running fourth, but has now just picked up a drive-through penalty for causing an avoidable collision. The stewards have decided that Lucas de Grassi needs to come into the pits.
Well, you know, fair enough if they're going to try to be consistent with these calls. He did harpoon Mike Conway out of the way fairly comprehensively, out of the race fairly terminally for Mike Conway, so he doesn't get any recompense, he doesn't get anything back from this penalty. But Lucas de Grassi will get a drive through. It was a straightforward collision. Lucas de Grassi's nose cone damaged, Mike Conway's rear end completely rearranged, and his race over.
So that now means that Lucas de Grassi coming in now, we can see a replay of the incident. Bruno Senna taken out with it as well. De Grassi taking out Mike Conway, who is now not racing. And we can just see one more time here, Senna spinning a little earlier and going straight across and onto the track, and that's what dropped him back into close company once again with de Grassi and Maldonado. So Rodriguez leads from Valsecchi, Grosjean, that man de Grassi, and Pastor Maldonado and Jerome D'Ambrosio. They're the top six, but Sebastian Buemi will move up into the top six because de Grassi has to come into the pits. And as it stands at the moment, Romain Grosjean catching Bruno Senna for the runners-up position in the 2008 championship. 12 laps to go though, anything could still happen. Welcome back to Monza. Roldan Rodriguez and Romain Grosjean dueling for second and third place at the moment. You just saw David Valsecchi skip through. He's in the lead and opening up his gap at the moment. Rodriguez has Grosjean bearing down on him, but Grosjean really on the charge here, because with Bruno Senna out of the points and down in 9th place, he can maybe sense, Chris, that this runners-up spot might be his after all, with Lucas de Grassi into the pits for a drive-through penalty.
Well, again, he doesn't have a great deal to lose, so he's just going to go for it. He's up there in 3rd place, but, you know, he's had plenty of 3rd places this year. He's been on the podium. He wants to go for a win here, and if he does that, if he takes that attitude, he could potentially sneak that 2nd place spot in the championship. Diving still down the inside, looking for the grippy part, braking and braking out, braking miles behind, taking Rodriguez there, wheel to wheel through the left-handed part there of the chicane, and just about clinching the position. Grosjean has got the better traction. He is away now through the Curva Grande, up to 2nd.
Very good. Romain Grosjean then now has David Valsecchi in his sights. And this is the way it stands. Bruno Senna 6 points clear of Romain Grosjean going into today's race. Now at the moment, Grosjean is on course for 5 points. So he needs at least one more point then to get ahead of Bruno Senna, and he'd do it on a countback. They've both got 2 wins each this season, but I make it that Romain Grosjean has finished second more times than Bruno Senna has. Remember, Senna finishing second in Barcelona in the first race, while Grosjean finished second in the feature race in Istanbul and also in the feature race at Hockenheim, and that might just give him the championship if he can get one more point here today and Bruno doesn't.
Well, we're on board there, pulling off that manoeuvre, absolutely on the limit of adhesion under braking, not locking up. You could just hear the engine slightly, the rear wheel slightly grabbing as he changed down the gears, and Parenti there being nudged out of the way there by Iaconelli, and wasn't very happy about that at all, and for good reason.
Yep, not surprised. Bully boy tactics on the Sunday morning. There's Giorgio Pantano as we ride with him. And Pantano at the moment has Jerome D'Ambrosio for company, but for how much longer has he managed to get past the Belgian and up into 5th place? Looks like he has. Now, what's that? Romain Grosjean going wide out of the second Lesmo and losing a place to Roldan Rodriguez, so he's back in 3rd again, maybe just pushing a little too hard in these greasy conditions.
Well, as we said earlier, you know, knowing his nature, he's got his head down and he wants to win this race. He can see the leader in front of him, and that is what he would be trying to do. Very strong on the brakes there down into turn 1. Rodriguez braking very early in comparison to the Frenchman behind him, but yeah, when you push that hard, you will make a mistake at some point. It just really depends where you make it as to whether or not you're going to get away with it or not.
And all the while, David Valsecchi is just cruising up in the lead. 4.9 seconds clear now of Roldan Rodriguez, who is more concerned with what's happening behind him than ahead of him at the moment, and Grosjean might want to be concerned about the man gaining there in the foreground, in the background I should say. Pastor Maldonado, quickest man on the track, just set the new fastest lap, the only man in the 1:47s at the moment, running in 4th place. Then comes Giorgio Pantano, then Jerome D'Ambrosio, then Buemi and Senna, separated by 1.8 seconds at the moment.
Well, just what you don't want if you're Romain Grosjean is to see that blue car coming up in your mirrors, that's for sure, because he will cause the Frenchman some problems if he catches him.
Early end to Luca Filippi's final race this season for the Arden team. Didn't really shine at ART and hasn't shone a huge amount since he joined Arden either. I think his season will be remembered for that race in Valencia where he tangled with that man, Romain Grosjean, just a little too often.
Yeah, it hasn't been the greatest of years. Filippi, a driver that has shown promise, particularly last year. On occasion, you know, he was very quick, and I think everyone was expecting great things from him, particularly when he joined this man in the ART team. I think we were expecting fireworks, and we were expecting Luca Filippi to be the team leader, really, of the ART team with his experience. But it was Grosjean, the star from Formula 3, that's really taken to GP2 very well indeed. Winning in the Asian GP2 Championship was a good springboard. Took it a while and has been a little bit more up and down with his form in the European Series. When he's good, but he's a bit feisty, sometimes too feisty, and that has cost him dearly a few times.
So Pastor Maldonado still gaining on Romain Grosjean as through the Curva Grande they go, and Grosjean 1.5 seconds behind Rodriguez at the moment. And Bruno Senna hanging on for 2nd spot in the championship. Giorgio Pantano, by the way, just comfortably sitting in 5th place at the moment, and I'm sure the most relaxed man here on the track this morning. The title's already sewn up, he's in front of his home crowd, he can just enjoy himself for one final race this season. Remains to be seen, of course, where he ends up next season. Can he come back and defend his GP2 crown, or is Formula 1 a possibility once again for the man who drove once for Jordan and was actually replaced at the Jordan team by Timo Glock? Now this is Lucas Di Grassi running back in 14th place, or he was. He's got ahead of Alvaro Parente, because that's Carlos Iaconelli in the BCN ahead of him. So Di Grassi up into 13th place now, but so far adrift of the points.
So far adrift of the points. Well, the car looks absolutely fine from where we are, and he's got the pace. His only damage in that incident, a big oversteer moment there at the second Lesmo, his only damage to his car is the very tip of his nose. Here he is out dragging Parent there, wheel to wheel, but again, very strong on the brakes there into the second chicane, tucking in behind Iaconelli.
And you saw coming through there, Sakon Yamamoto getting past Diego Nunes as well. So the second ART car up into 15th at the moment. What's the gap between Grosjean and Rodriguez? Now 2.1 seconds. Grosjean to Maldonado, less than a second. Bruno Senna, as it says there, down in 8th place. And he is a second behind Sebastian Buemi and lapping, well, pretty much the same. Last couple of laps, I've been keeping an eye on it, and separated by only a few hundredths of a second from Buemi in the Arden.
They look like they get extremely close under braking there into turn 1. This is where it all opens out again, getting your power down, getting your foot on the gas. It's a nightmare. In the dry, you'd just be on full throttle about a second or so really earlier than you can do it in the wet. The traction is extremely important. Getting the power down is really what makes the difference between the lap times of the cars, and you can see the drivers as they come through the chicane taking a very tight line, staying off the rubber. That's where the grip is. That's where you can just get on the power a fraction of a second earlier. But again, the difference as well is how the teams have set their cars up and how soft have they gone. How much have they gambled towards the track drying and how much have they gambled towards it staying wet? The ones that have gambled towards it staying wet are the ones that are going quickly at the moment and have done in the first half of this race anyway.
That light rain, that drizzle at the start of the race really took, I think, any chance away of the track drying out completely this morning. And who's that? Sakon Yamamoto out of the race and being pushed away by the marshals here at Monza. They've had a bit of work to do, those marshals, so far this weekend, and I wouldn't put it past them having a busy Sunday afternoon when the Formula 1 action gets underway at 1 o'clock on ITV1. Yellow flags being waved. You see Bruno Senna there. Is it Mir? Is he just gaining a little more on Sebastian Buemi on this lap as David Valsecchi sets another fastest lap of the race?
No, he certainly gained a lot on Buemi during the course of this lap. It's a lot of ground, it's only a small amount in time. They're travelling so quickly on the straight. A couple of tenths makes quite a big difference in terms of the gap, but it's D'Ambrosio with Buemi between him and Bruno Senna. Senna is closer than he was last time, gaining still on the brakes down there into turn 1, but so too is Buemi, gaining on D'Ambrosio in front.
So 3 of them going through, and probably about 5 car lengths covering them all through that chicane. Behind you just saw Tung and Zuber going through in 9th and 10th, but for Bruno Senna, just to strengthen his position in 2nd place in the championship, he could get past Buemi and D'Ambrosio. That would be very handy indeed on this Sunday morning, but still the yellow flag's being waved where Sakon Yamamoto was being pushed away down at that first chicane after stopping in his ART. Track temperature's 15 degrees, by the way, this morning, partially explaining why the track is not drying out very much. It is still pretty cold in the air and on the surface as well.
Well, the air's only 14 degrees. The sun hasn't managed to break through any of the cloud. It is really going to take a long time to dry. These are powerful cars with wide wet weather tyres. Normally you'd expect a drying line to have started to appear, but there isn't one. Buemi now defensive going into the Ascari chicane. Bruno Senna closer than he has been before over the curb on the left. Nice and smooth through the right-handed part, just nibbling away at the curb as they go onto the back straight there, and this is where you need to be tucked in right behind the car in front, trying to get a bit of an advantage from the toe in front. But again, as was yesterday, Bruno Senna struggling to generate much of a toe, and you know, they're all running a very low wing setting, but there is still differences between the cars. Low downforce, yes, but how low? If you've set the car up for dry-in conditions, you'll have even less wing than the car that's set for a slightly wetter setting. And, well, if you've got the dry settings, you'll be fast on the straight, but you might struggle around the corners as Maldonado just about gets stopped for turn 1.
Yeah, quite. It was less than half a car length behind Grosjean going through the chicane there. Maldonado on the charge, Giorgio Pantano, fastest man on the track now, and David Valsecchi, the leader, extending his lead to 6.4 seconds as Lucas Di Grassi now sets a fast lap, but that won't count for a point because he's out of the top 10. Bit of a shame for Lucas Di Grassi there. 1 extra point, of course, would take him level with Bruno Senna at the runners-up position in the championship at the moment, but you don't get a point for a fastest lap if you're outside of the top 10, and he's down in 13th place.
It's Maldonado that's the man on the move. Romain Grosjean's early pace seems to have just dipped away. Maybe he pushed a bit too hard on his wet weather tyres in these conditions. The track is wet and slippery, but there's not quite enough moisture, not quite enough lying water to cool the tyres down, so they overheat and you start losing grip very quickly. A few laps ago he was pushing very hard to catch Roldan Rodriguez and did so in fact, but I think now it's Maldonado that's catching him. Lucas Di Grassi braking from miles behind taking Iaconelli, and this time does get the car stopped for the corner. No dramas this time at the second chicane.
No dramas, just admiration. Nice one. As two Brazilians go through, changing places. De Grassi ahead of Iaconelli and up into 12th place. So still a long way out of the points at the moment. And Bruno Senna, by the way, still gaining on Sebastian Buemi. The gap down to 6/10. The gap between Grosjean and Maldonado, time-wise, 4/10 of a second. And it's round about 4 car lengths, isn't it, going down the main straight. Now, how late can Maldonado break into the chicane here? Is he going to try around the outside? And you kind of guessed that he was going to go straight on there and just get it all wrong. He'll come out possibly ahead of Romain Grosjean, or will he just let the ART slip past? He does, and he'll have to try that all over again. Ambitious, to say the least.
Well, that was always going to happen. The moment he started to get over to the left-hand side of the road on the way into turn 1, he got onto the normal dry racing line where the rubber has been laid down. It's very, very slippery. There's a huge difference in the grip you've got available to you, and he was never going to stop, and well, he knows that now.
Doesn't he just? Now there's Buemi stuck behind D'Ambrosio, and there's Bruno Senna coming over the, clouting actually the sleeping policeman, let alone the curb, attacking that chicane. A bit too aggressive there and a bit too far onto the inside. But he might just feel, even though there's only 4 laps to go, has Bruno Senna still got a chance of moving up into the points here this Sunday morning at Monza? We'll keep an eye out as D'Ambrosio accelerating away and opening up the distance between himself and Buemi in the Arden. Buemi, who next week will be testing for Toro Rosso, of course, down at Jerez, along with Takuma Sato. Be an interesting test to see how those two compare. Sato with Formula 1 experience, Buemi not quite as much. Are Toro Rosso looking at either of those two drivers for next season? This afternoon they might just be looking a little more closely at the race. Sebastian Vettel starting on pole in Formula 1, of course. Catch all the action on ITV as through goes Bruno Senna. And David Valsecchi, just to let you know, out in front you can see how much of the gap he's opening up at the top now. 7.2 seconds back to Rodriguez, with Grosjean running ahead of Maldonado and extending his advantage. Pantano sat on his own, running in 5th place, and then the trio battling for 6th, 7th and 8th. D'Ambrosio, Buemi and Senna. 3 laps to go then to the end of this GP2 season. And one little mistake from here could see you heading to the awards night with a smile on your face, or something of a frown and nothing to celebrate.
Well, again, these guys really are absolutely driving on a knife edge at all times. And, well, we're back with Parent and the Iaconelli, and it's the Iaconelli in the red car running wide out of the second Lesmo onto the curb. And this time Parent gets through. He'll be pleased about that. Don't forget, these two had a fairly close brush together down there in the first chicane a few laps ago, so Parent will be quite pleased to finally get past that red car and get on. And well, he's got Lucas de Grassi in front of him, but it's de Grassi that seems to have the pace at the moment.
Will be a popular win, won't it? David Valsecchi winning in front of his Italian fans, and winning for the first time in GP2 if he can manage to stay out of the lead. Now back with Bruno Senna down towards the Ascari chicane, under braking, closing up on the man in front of him, Sebastian Buemi. There's just no chance under braking, just can't leave it late enough as Bruno Senna goes wide coming out of the Ascari chicane. And the wider you go, the more unstable your car is when you put the throttle down. Seems to me the car's weaving around a bit here, Chris. The track does start to dry out to try and pick up some moisture in those wet weather tyres. Well,
the tyres will be getting extremely hot. These are proper treaded wet weather tyres, so the tread blocks will be wobbling around as they get hot. The rubber gets softer. It's water you need on the racetrack to cool them down and keep them firm and stable, but these cars will be becoming increasingly twitchy, increasingly tricky and increasingly unpredictable to drive. Braking, not too bad, but getting on the power, the mid-corner, the feeling of the car in high-speed corners, the stability will just not be anywhere near what the cars are like in the dry, and it's very, very easy to make a mistake in these conditions. 2 laps remain, and these guys are pushing harder than ever before. Buemi will be very keen to try and get that last point, the point that D'Ambrosio is sitting on at the moment. And well, D'Ambrosio will be keen not to throw it away on the last lap like he did last weekend. I was going to say, for a second Sunday in a row, although last Sunday was a tad more costly for him, as it was the lead
in his home race in Belgium that Pastor Maldonado took away from him in what has to be said spectacular style and a great overtaking move. Very impressive in the latter part of this season for me, Pastor Maldonado. As through down to the Ascari chicane then come this trio, and Bruno Senna's too far back once again to leave his braking late and try and get past Sebastian Buemi. It's a difficult track to pass on, is Monza, when it gets dry, and probably just not wet enough at the moment for too much overtaking. Maldonado still closing in on Grosjean. Pantano still riding all on his own. And then the Belgian, followed by Buemi, followed by Senna, but they're all following that man who's now started his last lap. David Valsecchi has an 8-second advantage. He can take it very slowly indeed. How must he be feeling in front of his home fans now, Chris, thinking that a GP2 win for the first time in his career is now on its way?
Well, you'd be feeling nervous, that's what you'd be feeling. You've got a few more corners to slide your way through. He has got a big advantage, 8 seconds, so if I was him, I'd be really cruising this lap, making sure you're braking nowhere near the limit, making sure you're carrying a little less speed into the high-speed corners and making sure you're just a little bit more careful getting on the power. You could lose a couple of seconds in this lap, no problem at all. You've just got to get that car to the line, see that checkered flag, and well, I'm sure that's what he's going to do.
Still behind him, Rodriguez, Grosjean and Maldonado can't afford to take it too easy. Giorgio Pantano lurking there as well. I would imagine smiling and grinning in the car and maybe chatting away on the radio as well. It's been a very easy Sunday for him, starting 10th on his way to finishing 5th. Rodriguez got the best of the start and moved up from 3rd place to pit Valsecchi going into the first corner, but since Valsecchi retook the lead in his Durango, he has never been headed and never ever looked like losing it. It's been a very mature drive from him this morning. Better conditions than it was yesterday. The dark clouds are getting a slight shade of light grey now, but it's the colours of black and white that David Valsecchi will be looking for as he comes out of the Parabolica, and the spray will be champagne soon, but for now it's water off the tyres as Valsecchi crosses the line to win for the first time in GP2. Rodriguez, fantastic race for him as well, comes home second, holds up Romain Grosjean and Pastor Maldonado, and then Giorgio Pantano. D'Ambrosio will finish 6th, Buemi 7th, Senna 8th, and Bruno Senna will hang on to runners-up spot in the GP2 Championship table because De Grassi didn't score points and Grosjean just didn't score enough. Well done today though to David Valsecchi. He'll celebrate along with his fellow countryman Pantano, who's the champion in 2008. Welcome back to Monza. That is Giorgio Pantano, the GP2 champion, who stopped his racing engineering car to go and celebrate and throw his gloves into the crowd. Now, has he managed to keep the engine going here without the steering wheel in place? Because he's got to try and find his way back. He has, you know. Well done.
Well, ever the showman, Giorgio Pantano wanting to celebrate his championship success from yesterday. Don't think he's massively celebrating being 5th in a GP2 race here in Monza, but it's all about being champion to him, and yeah, he wants to make sure everyone that has turned up early for the Grand Prix knows that he did it yesterday.
Oh yes, the words Pantano and Campione have been shouted around this racetrack since yesterday afternoon, but they'll be celebrating this man's achievements as well. David Valsecchi for the first time in GP2, a race winner, and leading Roldan Rodriguez and Romain Grosjean out onto the podium. Quite a long walk, so milk this moment just a little bit. Well, Valsecchi, and it was a thoroughly accomplished drive. Not a man we normally see running right up at the top, and after his troubles this year, the injury of course that he picked up Valsecchi after that big crash in Istanbul, you wouldn't begrudge him his moment of celebration and the Italian national anthem for him. Well, they've played that anthem a few times for Ferrari here in the past, but they play it today for Valsecchi and for Durango. Winning the final race of the season, Rodriguez and Grosjean, who just misses out on the runners-up spots behind Giorgio Pantano. Bruno Senna, not his best race of the season either, Chris, but finishes runner-up to the champion.
Well, second in the championship. I think he's going to be pleased with that. He'll be content with that. Not so content with the weekend, but it's been one of those weekends where I think car setup, you know, it's been a bit of a guess on the grid. You know, you've got full wet, full dry, and a million permutations in between, and I wouldn't have wanted to have been deciding how dry to set your car up or how wet, and I think these guys got it just right today. But Romain Grosjean doesn't look overly impressed with his third place either, and I've got a sneaky feeling we're going to see him back in GP2 next year, but probably more regularly on the top step.
Let's see. GP2 Asia champion couldn't make it a double in the main series. That went to Pantano. The race win today for David Valsecchi. His first taste of champagne. I'm sure there'll be much more coming his way this evening as well. GP2 for 2008. That's the racing done with.
Well, let's confirm the final Drivers' Championship in 2008 GP2 then. Giorgio Pantano is champion. Bruno Senna managed to come second and hold on there in front of Lucas Di Grassi, who got third. Romain Grosjean just 1 point behind him in fourth. Pastor Maldonado fifth. Sebastian Buemi sixth. Vitaly Petrov finishes seventh. And Alvaro Parente manages to stay in the top 8 of the Drivers' Championship. I have got Bruno Senna with me now, who just finished second in the Drivers' Championship. Bruno, you were hoping to win the title, but you did come second. You managed to pip in front of Lucas Di Grassi, but you're not happy, are you?
It was a difficult championship. Today was a very difficult race with the conditions. Everybody was touching with everybody, and every time you try to outbrake someone else, you fly off the road. So unfortunately, when Lucas crashed into Conway in front of me,
this is the incident that we were just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's very close racing. Lucas was close to us. Me and Conway were not giving any inch to each other, so it was good racing. And as soon as that happened, Lucas had a run on me. I came back and I let whoever I overtook pass me again, and it was a bit of a difficult thing to measure. The team said it was okay, and then Lucas tried on the next lap a bit of an opportunistic lunge, and you know, it's one of those things. So it's really difficult to measure yourself when you're like this. I had to go straight on to avoid Mike, and you know, it's one of those things.
And just very quickly, what's in store for you? Any ideas yet? I know I asked you yesterday. Hoping to push into Formula 1.
I think so. I think results are pretty good. And let's see what happens now. It's negotiation time now that I don't have to race anymore.
Thanks very much, Bruno, and congratulations for this season. There you heard it, Bruno Senna finishing second in the championship. Giorgio Pantano did take the championship crown here in GP2 2008. Well, that's it from GP2, but there's lots more coming up here in Monza. Let's take a look. We've got the highlights following this here on ITV4 of the qualifying in Formula 1. Then it's the Formula 1 race live on ITV1. Catch all the build-up at 12 noon. And then if you missed that, you can see all the action with the race highlights at 11:15 p.m. on ITV1. And there is lots more sport this weekend as well on ITV. Also, we've got the rugby, which is the Premiership Rugby Union highlights at 6:30 p.m. on ITV4. And following that, at 8 p.m, you can watch the Cycling Tour of Britain, also on ITV4. So just to remind you then, the Formula 1 race here at a very wet Monza is at 12 noon today. Catch Steve Ryder and Mark Blundell for all the action. But it was Giorgio Pantano that's taken the crown here in the 2008 championship. Bruno Senna came second, Lucas Di Grassi third, Romain Grosjean fourth, but it was David Valsecchi who took his win here in Italy. But that's it from the final of GP2. Watch out for these drivers in Formula 1 next year. See you soon.